The ground trembles beneath the murky water. Something massive moves through the ancient swamp, leaving ripples in its wake. Teeth like daggers pierce through the darkness. But this is not the age of dinosaurs. This is something older, stranger, and far more terrifying. 4 creatures ruled their worlds before Tyrannosaurus rex ever took its first breath. Their stories have been buried for hundreds of millions of years, waiting in the rocks. The thing about apex predators is that they leave traces. A bite mark here, a fossil dropping there, a claw the size of your forearm preserved in ancient stone. And when scientists piece together these clues, they reveal creatures so bizarre that they seem like fever dreams. But these animals were real. They hunted, they killed, they dominated entire ecosystems. And most people have never heard their names. We are going back over 300 million years to meet 4 apex predators that time forgot. From the earliest oceans to the swamps that would become our coal, from underwater nightmares to land predators with saber teeth, each of these creatures was the deadliest thing in its environment. No natural enemies, no competition. Just pure predatory power at the top of the food chain. So what were these secret giants? What made them so successful? And why did they disappear? The answers are hidden in some of the strangest fossils ever discovered. Let us start at the very beginning, when the first true predator appeared in Earth's oceans. Over 500 million years ago, during a time called the Cambrian Period, life in the ocean was exploding in diversity. Most creatures were small, soft, and slow. They grazed on ancient seafloors or drifted through the water column without much drama. Then something changed. A hunter appeared. And this hunter was like nothing that had ever existed before. Its name was Anomalocaris, which means abnormal shrimp. But calling it a shrimp is like calling a great white shark a goldfish. Anomalocaris was the biggest predator in the Cambrian oceans, typically growing to about 60 centimeters or 2 feet long. That might not sound huge to us, but back then most other animals were smaller than your thumb. Anomalocaris was a monster by Cambrian standards. It was the apex predator of its time, roughly 515 million years ago. What did this creature look like? Well, it had a body that was flattened from side to side, with flexible fins running down each side like the ruffles on a fancy dress. These fins allowed it to swim through the water with surprising agility. It had large compound eyes mounted on stalks, giving it excellent vision to spot prey from a distance. But the really weird part was its mouth and arms. Sticking out from the front of its head were 2 long appendages covered in spikes. Think of them like tentacles, but armored with barbs on the inside edge. Anomalocaris used these spiked arms to grab prey and pull the unlucky victim toward its mouth. And what a mouth it was! Instead of jaws like we have, Anomalocaris had a circular opening on the underside of its head. This mouth was ringed with tooth-like serrations arranged in a circle, forming a crushing mechanism unlike anything alive today. When those spiky arms dragged food into that circular maw, there was no escape. For a long time, scientists believed Anomalocaris was an absolute terror that crunched through hard-shelled trilobites like we crack open walnuts. Trilobites were those famous armored bugs of the Cambrian, and some fossil trilobites do show bite marks. Plus, crushed trilobite pieces have been found in fossilized poop from this time period. So naturally, everyone assumed the biggest predator around was responsible. Anomalocaris had the reputation of a serial killer. But recent research revealed something surprising. Scientists created detailed 3D models of Anomalocaris appendages and tested how they actually functioned. Turns out those spiky arms and that circular mouth were better suited for soft prey, not hard shells. In fact, if Anomalocaris tried to bite through a fully armored trilobite, it probably would have damaged its own mouth parts. The exoskeleton was just too tough. So what did it actually eat? Researchers now think Anomalocaris preferred squishy foods. Soft-bodied arthropods, primitive jellies, anything that did not have armor plating. It probably hunted just above the seafloor, using quick bursts of speed from its swimming fins to ambush prey. As for those trilobites with bite marks, Other predators were probably responsible. Or maybe Anomalocaris caught trilobites right after they molted, when their shells were still soft and vulnerable. Timing is everything when you are a Cambrian hunter. The discovery story of Anomalocaris is almost as twisted as its mouth. Early paleontologists found its body parts as separate fossils and thought they were looking at three completely different animals. The spiked arm was mistaken for a shrimp's tail. The circular mouth looked like a jellyfish. The body segments were labeled as a sea sponge. It was a scientific jigsaw puzzle scattered across decades. Not until the 1980s did scientists finally realize all these pieces fit together into one extraordinary creature. Today, Anomalocaris stands as an icon of the Cambrian explosion, that incredible burst of evolutionary innovation that created most major animal groups. It represents the first giant predator in Earth's history. Before Anomalocaris, the ocean was a relatively peaceful place. After Anomalocaris, everything changed. Other animals had to evolve defenses like harder shells and better eyes just to survive. In a way, this abnormal shrimp kicked off an evolutionary arms race that has never stopped. Anomalocaris eventually died out by the end of the Cambrian period, but its legacy lives on. It proved that predation shapes ecosystems in powerful ways. It showed that evolution can create solutions to problems we have never seen before. And it demonstrated that being the biggest and baddest does not guarantee survival forever. Speaking of big, let us jump forward in time to meet something truly gigantic. The Devonian period arrived about 390 million years ago. Fish with jaws now ruled the waters, and life was beginning to crawl onto land. But in certain rivers and coastal swamps, the top predator was neither fish nor early reptile. It was an arthropod, a giant arthropod, the kind that makes your skin crawl just thinking about it. Meet Jaekelopterus, the largest sea scorpion ever discovered. Actually, calling it a sea scorpion is a bit misleading because Jaekelopterus probably lived in brackish or freshwater environments, not the open ocean. But it definitely looked like a scorpion the size of a small car. This creature could grow to about 2.5 to 2.6 meters in length. That is over 8 feet long, longer than most adult humans are tall. And it is the largest arthropod, the largest invertebrate animal with an exoskeleton that has ever existed on Earth. Jaekelopterus belonged to a group called Eurypterids, specifically the pterygotide family. These animals thrived between 428 and 391 million years ago, swimming through ancient waterways long before dinosaurs evolved. The body plan was nightmare fuel. Jaekelopterus had a broad armored body with multiple segments like a lobster but stretched out. In the back, it had paddle-like limbs for swimming. But the front end is where things got really scary. 2 massive clawed appendages jutted forward, each ending in a serrated pincer. One fossilized claw measures 46 centimeters, or about 1.5 feet by itself. These chelicerae, as they are called, were grabbing tools. Jaekelopterus would snatch prey with those claws, and once it had a grip, the victim was done. Then came the truly bizarre part. At the base of its legs, Jaekelopterus had tooth-like mouth parts that it used to shred food. So the claws caught dinner, and the leg-mounted teeth did the actual killing and eating. Unlike a modern scorpion, Jaekelopterus probably did not have a venomous stinger on its tail. It did not need one. When you are over 8 feet long with claws that could grab a fish the size of your arm, venom is just overkill. Scientists have found some truly disturbing evidence about what Jaekelopterus ate. Fossil fish show claw bite marks that match Eurypterid claws perfectly. Fossilized feces, called coprolites, contain remains of armored placoderm fish, trilobites, and even other Eurypterids. Yes, Jaekelopterus ate other sea scorpions. It was the apex predator of its environment, the Tyrannosaurus rex of the Devonian, and it specialized in dining on the heavily armored fish that filled ancient lakes and rivers. With its huge size and powerful claws, an adult Jaekelopterus had almost nothing to fear. For years, scientists debated whether these sea scorpions were actually deadly or just big and clumsy. One relative called Acutyramus was thought to have weak claws and poor vision, earning it the nickname of gentle giant. Some researchers even jokingly called it a pussycat, but new studies overturned that idea completely. When scientists re-examined the claws and eyes of these creatures, they found the animals were much stronger and sharper-eyed than previously assumed. Sure, Jaekelopterus was probably not a speed demon. Its huge body and relatively small swimming paddles meant it cruised rather than sprinted through the water. But it did not need to be fast. A stealthy approach and one quick lunge with those spiny claws could ensnare prey effectively. And its compound eyes were likely as good as those of modern predatory arthropods like mantis shrimp, which have some of the most complex vision in the animal kingdom. The discovery of Jaekelopterus itself reads like an adventure story. In 2007, paleontologists working in Germany unearthed that massive 46-centimeter claw fossil. When they measured it and calculated the size of the creature it came from, they realized they were looking at something unprecedented. This find, named Jaekelopterus renananae, extended the known maximum size for arthropods and proved that these animals could reach truly monstrous proportions. Why could Jaekelopterus get so huge? One factor might have been higher oxygen levels in the Paleozoic atmosphere. More oxygen in the air meant arthropods, which breathed through their body surfaces, could support larger body sizes. Additionally, the lack of large vertebrate predators in freshwater environments meant these eurypterids faced little competition. They filled the apex predator niche until later in the Devonian, when big sharks and bony fish began challenging them. By the end of the Paleozoic era, the reign of giant sea scorpions came to an end. Changing climates and the rise of new predators pushed them out. But for tens of millions of years, creatures like Jaekelopterus were the nightmares of ancient waters. If you had been a fish in a Devonian swamp and seen a pair of spiked claws burst from the murky bottom, your last thought would have been pure terror. Now, if you are enjoying learning about these ancient apex predators, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We have got 2 more incredible creatures to meet, and trust me, the next one has a seriously dark secret. Let us move forward to the late Carboniferous period, about 300 million years ago. The world looked completely different. Massive forests of giant club moss trees covered the land, towering over 30 meters or 100 feet tall. Enormous dragonflies with wingspans of 75 centimeters or 2.5 feet zipped through humid air. And in the dark, stagnant swamps and bayous that would later become our coal deposits, a very unusual shark ruled the waters. This was not your typical ocean shark. Orthacanthus was a freshwater apex predator that slithered through weed-choked swamps like an eel with teeth. It could grow up to 3 meters or 10 feet in length, making it the largest member of the Xenocanthidae, an extinct family of freshwater sharks. Its body was elongated and cylindrical, with a ribbon-like dorsal fin running along its back from head to tail. And here is the really weird part. Jutting from the back of its skull was a peculiar spine, giving Orthacanthus a distinctive silhouette. This spine, which gave the creature its name meaning straight spine, likely served as a defensive weapon to keep larger attackers from biting its head. But the truly distinctive feature of Orthacanthus was its teeth. Each tooth had 2 prongs, like a tiny forked dagger. These double-fanged teeth were perfect for gripping slippery prey. Once Orthacanthus bit down on a fish or amphibian, those forked teeth ensured nothing was wriggling free. Fossil evidence shows that around 300 to 260 million years ago, Orthacanthus was the top predator of freshwater swamp habitats in what is now Europe and North America. It prowled the shallow, muddy waterways of the coal forests, those dense prehistoric jungles that formed the coal we burn today. With its long, slender body and short fins, Orthacanthus could weave through underwater vegetation with ease, ambushing prey in tight spaces where bulkier predators could not follow. The hunting strategy was probably similar to a modern eel or pike. Orthacanthus would lurk in tangles of roots and fallen logs, its dark body camouflaged against the murky water. When a primitive fish or a small tetrapod, one of those early 4-limbed amphibians, swam close enough, Orthacanthus would strike. A sudden sideways lunge, powerful jaws snapping shut, and those two pronged teeth sinking deep. Game over. Orthacanthus ate fish, crustaceans, and the early amphibians that shared the coal swamps. Some of these amphibians were quite large, human-sized, salamander-like creatures. A battle between a 3-meter Orthacanthus and a big amphibian would have been a true clash of Carboniferous titans. But here is where the story takes a dark turn. Scientists discovered something deeply unsettling about Orthacanthus. This shark was a cannibal. It ate its own babies, and we know this because of fossilized poop. Paleontologists examining Carboniferous swamp deposits found spiral-shaped coprolites, fossilized feces with a distinctive corkscrew shape. These could only have been produced by Orthacanthus because this shark had a uniquely spiraled intestinal tract, something like a corkscrew rectum. When researchers broke open some of these fossil droppings and looked inside, they found tiny Orthacanthus teeth. Baby teeth. Juvenile teeth from young sharks. This was direct proof that adult Orthacanthus were eating their own offspring. The behavior is called filial cannibalism, and it is the earliest known example of shark cannibalism in the fossil record. So what was going on? Why would a shark eat its own young? It appears that Orthacanthus used certain swampy areas as nurseries. Females would give birth in these protected waters, safe from the bigger saltwater predators that lived in the ocean. The young sharks could grow up in relative safety, feeding on small fish and invertebrates. But when food became scarce, the adults would turn on the juveniles. Baby sharks were an easy meal, already conveniently located in the same habitat. It is a chilling survival strategy, but in the cutthroat world of late Paleozoic swamps, hunger made the rules. This behavior actually makes Orthacanthus more interesting, not less. It shows how apex predators adapt to challenging environments. When your habitat is isolated and resources are limited, sometimes the only available food is your own kind. Modern sharks do this too. Many shark species practice intrauterine cannibalism, where the strongest embryo eats its siblings while still in the womb. Nature is not sentimental about family. Orthacanthus had few natural predators once fully grown. That head spine might have deterred attacks from above, and some scientists speculate it could have even been mildly venomous, though this is debated. In any case, adult Orthacanthus were the sharks of the swamp, ruling waterways at a time when no large land carnivores had evolved to challenge them. The genus Orthacanthus first appeared around 400 million years ago in the Devonian and survived all the way until the early Triassic, roughly 225 million years ago. That is an impressive run of over 175 million years. But eventually, the strange xenocanth sharks vanished, likely victims of changing environments and competition from more modern fish. By the time dinosaurs rose to prominence, Orthacanthus was long gone. Today, Orthacanthus does not enjoy the fame of a megalodon or a great white, but paleontologists know it as a fascinating example of evolutionary experimentation. It was a shark that left the sea, adapted to inland waters, and became a freshwater terror. And thanks to spiral-shaped fossils containing baby teeth, we even know about its darkest dining habit. The next time you think of a swamp monster, think of Orthacanthus, the spined eel-like cannibal shark that once prowled the coal age, jungles of Earth. But we have one more apex predator to meet, and this one lived on land. The Permian Period arrived around 299 million years ago, and life on land was getting interesting. Reptiles had evolved and were diversifying rapidly. Forests of seed plants and conifers replaced the coal swamps, and in what is now Russia, a truly terrifying predator emerged. Its name was Inostrancevia, and it was a saber-toothed killer that ruled the late Permian landscape about 252 million years ago. If you could see Inostrancevia in person, you would be confused about what you were looking at. It had a long, somewhat reptilian body with 4 stout legs and a lengthy tail. Its skin was probably thick and hairless, maybe similar to a rhinoceros, but its skull told a different story. Inostrancevia had a massive head, nearly 60 centimeters or 2 feet long, with huge curved saber-like canine teeth jutting from the upper jaw. These fangs were knife-like, designed for stabbing and slashing. They made Inostrancevia one of the first true saber-toothed predators on Earth, millions of years before the famous saber-toothed cats evolved. Inostrancevia measured about 3 to 4 meters in length, roughly 10 to 13 feet long, about the size of a modern tiger or polar bear. It weighed around 300 kilograms or 660 pounds. This was a heavy, muscular animal built for bringing down large prey. So what exactly was Inostrancevia? It belonged to a group called Gorgonopsians, often described as mammal-like reptiles, though that term is outdated. More accurately, Inostrancevia was an early therapsid, a member of the lineage that would eventually lead to mammals. Gorgonopsians were the apex predators of the late Permian, and Inostrancevia was the largest of them known. It was the top boss of Permian Russia, the king of its ecosystem. With its powerful build and strong limb bones, Inostrancevia could bring down prey its own size or larger. Paleontologists think it hunted big plant eaters like dicynodonts, which were pig to cow-sized herbivorous therapsids, and bulky pariasaurs, heavily built reptiles that lumbered across the landscape. The hunting technique was probably similar to modern big cats. Inostrancevia could open its jaw extremely wide, then stab and slash with those elongated canines, delivering wounds that would quickly prove fatal. After killing prey with the saber fangs, it would use smaller serrated teeth in the front of its mouth, its incisors, to tear off chunks of meat. The body posture of Inostrancevia was interesting. It was neither fully upright like a mammal, nor fully sprawling like a lizard. Instead, it had a semi-sprawling gait, with the hind limbs held somewhat under the body and the front limbs splayed out to the sides. This gave it a distinctive walking style, probably a bit awkward-looking but effective enough for ambush hunting. Despite its power, Inostrancevia lived during one of the most unstable times in Earth's history. The late Permian was a period of environmental chaos. Massive volcanic eruptions in Siberia were pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, triggering global warming and ocean acidification. Ecosystems were collapsing, species were dying off. The world was heading toward the worst mass extinction in Earth's history, an event that would kill roughly 90% of all species. This event, known as the Permian Triassic extinction or the Great Dying, happened about 252 million years ago. And here is where the story of Inostrancevia gets really interesting. Fossils of Inostrancevia were originally found in northern Russia, and scientists assumed it was endemic to that region. But then, remarkably, remains of the same genus were discovered thousands of miles away in South Africa's Karoo Basin. How did that happen? As the Permian period neared its end, the environment in South Africa deteriorated rapidly. The native apex predators, other Gorgonopsians called rubigenes, died out one by one before the final extinction event hit. This left a vacancy at the top of the food chain, and into that vacancy stepped Inostrancevia. It appears this predator migrated about 7,000 miles across the supercontinent Pangaea, traveling from what is now Russia to what is now South Africa, to fill the empty ecological niche. Paleontologists studying rock formations in the Karoo found 2 giant Gorgonopsian skulls that did not match any local species. When they analyzed the fossils, they realized these were Inostrancevia, immigrants from far away. For a brief period, Inostrancevia became the dominant predator in South Africa, taking advantage of the absence of competition. The ecosystem was destabilized by climate change, and suddenly a foreign predator arrived to terrorize the surviving herbivores. But this was a last hurrah. The Permian Triassic extinction struck with devastating force. Volcanic activity, global warming, ocean anoxia, and acid rain combined to create a planetary catastrophe. An estimated 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species went extinct. Inostrancevia and all its Gorgonopsian relatives perished. They left no direct descendants, though distantly related, therapsids would eventually evolve into mammals tens of millions of years later. The fossil record from this time period reveals something troubling. In just a couple of million years around the extinction, the identity of the apex predator shifted multiple times as different carnivores rose and fell. Inostrancevia's migration into Africa was one of those shifts, a sign of how unstable ecosystems had become. It demonstrates that even the mightiest hunters are not immune to extinction. In fact, apex predators are often among the first to go when ecosystems collapse because they depend on a stable food web of prey species. Scientists draw parallels to the modern world, noting that today's apex predators like tigers, wolves, and polar bears are highly vulnerable to habitat loss and climate change. The fate of Inostrancevia serves as a deep time warning. Being at the top of the food chain does not guarantee survival when the entire system falls apart. Though Inostrancevia rarely appears in popular media or documentaries, it is a superstar among paleontologists. It was the biggest saber-tooth of the Permian, a key player in the pre-dinosaur world, and evidence of how life responds to environmental catastrophe. It shows that long before Tyrannosaurus rex or saber-toothed cats, evolution had already experimented with large, terrifying predators armed with knife-like teeth. If the Great Dying had not occurred, creatures like Inostrancevia might have continued to dominate and perhaps given rise to even more advanced mammalian carnivores. Instead, their extinction cleared the way for a new era and the eventual rise of the dinosaurs. But in those final Permian days, Inostrancevia was king. It was the last great apex predator of the Paleozoic era, prowling a dying world with lethal teeth and an unmistakable ferocity. So what have we learned from these 4 secret apex predators? From Anomalocaris in the ancient Cambrian seas to Inostrancevia on the eve of the Great Dying, each was a master of its environment. Each ruled its world, and each eventually disappeared, leaving only fossils to tell their stories. These creatures remind us that the history of life on Earth is filled with experiments. Evolution tried out body plans and hunting strategies that seem alien to us now. A circular mouth ringed with teeth, claws longer than your forearm, double-pronged teeth for gripping slippery prey, saber fangs for slashing through thick hide. Each solution worked brilliantly for its time until environmental conditions changed. The story of apex predators is also a story of ecosystems. Anomalocaris probably pressured other Cambrian animals to evolve better defenses, starting an evolutionary arms race. Jaekelopterus filled the top predator role in Devonian freshwater environments before big vertebrate carnivores evolved. Orthacanthus adapted to isolated swamp habitats by becoming a cannibal when resources ran low, and Inostrancevia migrated thousands of miles to exploit an empty ecological niche during a time of environmental collapse. These patterns repeat throughout Earth's history. Predators evolve to fill available niches. Prey evolves defenses. Ecosystems reach a balance. Then something changes, climate shifts, new competitors arrive, or a mass extinction wipes the slate clean and the cycle begins again. Studying these ancient apex predators is not just about marveling at their strangeness. It teaches us how ecosystems function and respond to change. We see how top predators influence the evolution of everything below them in the food web. We see how vulnerable even the most dominant species can be to environmental stress. And we see that no reign lasts forever, no matter how powerful the predator. The fossil record keeps these secrets locked in stone until curiouser. Scientists unravel them. A spiked claw found in Germany. Baby teeth inside fossilized poop from a coal swamp. A massive skull discovered in the deserts of South Africa. Piece by piece, the lives of Anomalocaris, Jaekelopterus, Orthacanthus, and Inostrancevia have come into focus, revealing epic battles and adaptations from hundreds of millions of years ago. These apex predators may not star in Hollywood movies or appear on lunchboxes, but their scientific stories are more fascinating than any fiction. They were real animals that lived, hunted, struggled, and died in worlds so different from ours that they seem like alien planets. Yet the same evolutionary forces that shaped them still shape life today. Predation, competition, adaptation, and extinction operate now just as they did in the Cambrian seas or the Permian forests. So the next time you think of prehistoric predators, remember, it was not all Tyrannosaurus rex and giant reptiles. Long before the age of dinosaurs, other killers ruled the seas, swamps, and forests. A shrimp-armed sea terror that pioneered predation. A scorpion the size of a surfboard that terrorized Devonian waters. A shark that adapted to freshwater and ate its own babies to survive. And a saber-toothed proto-mammal that journeyed across a dying supercontinent in one last desperate attempt to thrive. These are the legends of a lost world, the 4 secret apex predators from over 300 million years ago that finally get to step out of the shadows and into the spotlight they deserve. Their reigns may have ended, but their stories endure, written in stone and brought to life by the patient work of paleontologists who refuse to let these ancient giants be forgotten. The age of dinosaurs gets all the attention, but the age before the dinosaurs was equally dramatic, equally violent, and equally filled with incredible creatures. Anomalocaris, Jaekelopterus, Orthacanthus, and Inostrancevia prove that apex predators have dominated Earth for over 500 million years, taking many forms but always serving the same role at the top of the food chain. And as long as life exists on this planet, there will always be predators and prey, hunters and hunted, in an endless evolutionary dance that shapes the living world.